There's been some breaking news in connection to the Trump Epstein scandal that just won't go away. Today, the Wall Street Journal reports that in May, Attorney General Pam Bondi told Trump that his name is mentioned numerous times in connection to files related to the late convicted child sex predator, Jeffrey Epstein. That same report cites several senior Trump administration officials who say that his name is one of the hundreds mentioned, also high profile people, as, quote, unverified hearsay. Now, it has not been reported what the specific documents were or the context for which Trump's name is mentioned. But I want to note that a few weeks ago, there was an ABC reporter who asked Trump specifically, did Pam Bondi tell him that his name was in the files? And he said no. Now, the DOJ is calling these reports false, and the White House communication director is dismissing this latest report as fake news. This is just the latest revelation that has come out, and again, a scandal that continues to grow as we learn more. And I wanted to make sure that I had this update in a conversation that I'm going to post next. It's with SMU political science professor Jillson, and we talk about the political implications of this scandal. Is this something that Trump can overcome? Is this something that the GOP can overcome? Because, as I said, it continues to grow. So please stick around and check out our conversation. This week, House Speaker Mike Johnson shut down the House floor early to avoid a vote on a resolution that would have called on the Trump administration to release files associated with the late child sex predator, Jeffrey Epstein. But will this be enough to quiet the storm? But before we unpack all that, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button. That's free of charge and it supports the channel. Joining me today is Southern Methodist University professor, political science professor, Jillson. Welcome.
Good to be with you again.
Again, thank you for coming. And before we get started, I wanted to do a quick timeline of some things that have kind of happened in case those of you that may not have been paying attention, to get us up to speed on where we're at today, because this has been it's been a firestorm of events that doesn't seem to be going away. So the Epstein saga, if you will, has been talked about in the MAGA sphere for years. It's something that a lot of conspiracy theories have been built on. And there have been people like FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino, who his podcast was kind of built on that Epstein fervor and other things like it. So it's something that they were really hoping that once Trump got into office, that they were going to get a complete basically access to all of the files. So in February, after the Trump administration, Trump wins the election, he's now in office. Attorney General Pam Bondi says in a Fox interview that, quote, the Epstein client list is sitting on her desk for review. Now, she later claimed that she meant the actual files and not the client list. Maybe a week or two later, 15 GOP influencers were invited to the White House. They come outside, there's a photo op, they're holding up these binders that they purport to be the files related to Epstein. Well, we later found out that those were just basically, it was public information. We already knew those things. In June, Trump and Elon Musk have their epic blowout, with Musk then tweeting to his tens of millions of followers on X that the reason why the Epstein files had not been released is because, quote, was in them. That's according to Musk. July 7th, that week, the White House is now dealing with fallout because Bondi then announces that they found no client list related to Epstein, that there was basically nothing further to review, and that Epstein did in fact die by suicide in a Manhattan prison in August of 2019. And after that announcement, that's when the floodgates really, really opened. So cut to around the week of July 18th, the Trump DOJ asked the judge to unseal grand jury material related to Epstein and his madam, Ghislaine Maxwell. But that didn't seem to be enough. And that was in response to, I guess, some of that backlash. But even with that request, the train kept moving. Cut to maybe a couple of days later, President Trump filed a lawsuit over a Wall Street Journal report where they detailed a story and a tawdry birthday letter allegedly written by Trump to Epstein. And basically, they were showing the fact that these two had a long-standing relationship, even as Trump tries to distance himself from Jeffrey Epstein. So that kind of puts us up to date with some of where we're at now. And what I wanted to first get into you with before we talk about some of the ramifications of this is, what is at stake for Trump to be tied to someone as nefarious as a Jeffrey Epstein-like character politically, before we even get into the way they've kind of handled this situation? What are what's at stake for him?
Yeah, one of the great dangers for Donald Trump is that his MAGA base in the Republican Party and the broader Republican Party have discounted much of what they know about Trump's history, including convictions for sexual oppression, the tape that came out in 2016 where he was bragging about being able to grab women by their private parts, and other parts of his history, to connect up with someone who has those same sort of attitudes toward women, but younger women, teenage girls, underage girls. That's a dangerous connection because it could validate and even expand the concerns that people have had all along about Trump, and maybe even puncture some of that support for Trump in the MAGA base that at some point he's going to see a bridge too far. Maybe this is that bridge.
And that's right, because his base, we saw that the infamous tape, was it Inside Edition or one of those types of shows where they had the recording of him saying that. And even then, even amongst his female supporters, they excused all of that. So it's interesting to me that this is the thing. It doesn't seem to be going away for him. And it may bring up all of those things that they kind of shoved to the side. As you said, now they may revisit those things.
Yeah, I think that's right. This connection between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein goes back into the 1980s and 90s when they were both very young Playboy members of the New York social set, both very interested on beautiful women. Jeffrey Epstein was close to the owner of Victoria's Secret fashion line, and Donald Trump at one point bought the Miss America pageant to give themselves access to very beautiful women. And so that connection goes way back. And to have it tainted by Jeffrey Epstein's felony convictions for pursuing underage women in large numbers over decades is dangerous for Trump.
And this is something that even he talked about. And as I said earlier, when I was going over the timeline, his supporters, his base, they were constantly talking about Jeffrey Epstein. They wanted to know what happened. And this is something that he, and either by himself at some points talking about he was going to release it, or his people that, they're getting orders from him. They're telling his base and the United States that they're going to release these files. And it made me think about just the dangers of when people traffic in conspiracy theories. They were floating a lot of these things for months and months and months. And now that people are asking for them, they're being told there's nothing to see here. And at one point, I believe maybe last week or the week before, Trump tells his base, anyone who's still talking about it, you are weaklings, you're dumb, I don't need your support anymore. But they're basically asking for what he and his people were telling them they were going to get.
Yeah, one of the great conspiracy theories of the MAGA base over the last 10 years or so is that Jeffrey Epstein is just the tip of the iceberg, that there is a broad conspiracy among U.S. and even global elites to use their power and influence for their own benefit, financial, sexual, otherwise. And that Jeffrey Epstein was one of the purveyors of underage young women to this elite that might have included Prince Andrew of Great Britain, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, lots of others as well. And so the idea was that we can unravel this whole globalist elite conspiracy against the interests of regular Americans through Jeffrey Epstein. If there's a client list, it's going to be Democrats and liberals who are going to be on that list, because those are the kind of people that would traffic in underage young girls, not good conservatives like like the people on our side. And that went on for years, and people made sort of podcast reputations off of that, including Bongino in the DOJ, Pam Bondi less so, but she's adopted some of that rhetoric, and the head of the FBI as well trafficked in that. And now they're in charge of the government, of the state, the deep state from the Republican perspective. And they have said that all of this stuff is there, available, and they'll put it out. Now they're in charge. And now they say, oh, nothing to see here. We looked. In fact, there is no client list, nothing of interest here. Let's move on. And there is an emotional investment and an ideological investment in the MAGA base in this story of a globalist elite serving its own interest that is not going to go away because they created it and now it's consuming them.
What do you make of, from just a political standpoint, in terms of the moves, the way that Trump and his administration has handled this case? It's surprising to me. I'm going to go back to when the 15 GOP influencers were invited to the White House and they were holding up these files. And then, of course, it was filled with nothing but public information. And I feel like that was the first step in for, I mean, what I would think among his base would be questioning, why would you invite those people to the White House, give them something that everyone already knew, trot them out as if it was something? It seemed to me, just from watching afar, just like a rookie mistake. Or did he, and even it would lead to questions of, do you think that his base was going to buy that as and soothe them in terms of the fervor at which they want information related to this case?
Yeah, I think he assumed that they were going to buy it initially because they wanted to believe that there was damning material in there that would connect to Bill Clinton and perhaps Barack Obama and others. And at every other turn, Trump had been able to call the base back together and to have them support his view, even to give up views that they had earlier. Ukraine, for example, Republicans like Marco Rubio had been big supporters of Ukraine. Trump says we're done with Ukraine. They had to figure out how to get behind him on that, and it was often ugly to watch, but they struggled to do it. And they did it again with the big, beautiful bill and others. This is really the first time that the base has said, you talked about this. We believed you. We adopted this as our own understanding of the nature of the problem that we have with the American elite ignoring our interests. And now you tell us that there was nothing ever there. We're angry. And we're angry at you because you're the ones in charge now who could release this stuff. And we want to know why you're not, because we still believe it's there. That's the real problem that Trump has. The base still believes it there. He's the only one that can release it. And they're saying, we're not going away.
Do you think that this could open up a floodgate of what I would just call questioning, with people asking, his base asking more questions? You know, he trotted out the election was stolen ahead of the 2020 election. He was trotting that out, and we saw what that led to. That led to January 6th, a very violent day. And there are still people in his base that believe that the election was stolen. So we know that from the past that he kind of traffics in that. And I was wondering if, now that they're kind of breaking because of the Epstein scandal, do you think this is something that would make them start to question the whole conspiracy theory that he was trotting that wasn't true around the 2020 election, or maybe some of his other the misinformation that he's been putting out, and kind of keep them in line? Do you think this is going to be something that will cause them to start to ask real questions of everything else that he told them that they blindly believed?
Yeah, I think probably not, but this alone is big enough to really undercut the connection to the MAGA base. But if you go back all the way to the idea that that Barack Obama was not born in the United States and therefore can't be a legitimate president. You go back to Pizzagate, that there is a Democratic elite in Washington trafficking young girls out of the basement of this pizza joint. And some yahoo drives up from North Carolina with guns to free the girls. So people do believe this kind of stuff. And I don't think that the MAGA base will go back and question all of those things, because it is part of their broader conspiracy theory mindset and their explanation of why the government works the way it does. But even here on this one big Jeffrey Epstein thing, if it looks as if Donald Trump can't be trusted, that will enervate people, take away their energy, take away their enthusiasm as we approach the 2026 midterm elections, in which the controlling dominant party almost always takes losses. And if you've got that dynamic and the base is angry and disgusted with elected officials, beginning with Donald Trump, that can open the door to the Democrats to capturing the House, probably not the Senate, but even the House. They can stop everything that Donald Trump wants to do in his last 2 years, except judicial appointments, which are handled in the Senate. So it would still be a big deal and would break the Republican control, the trifecta people call it, the presidency, both houses of Congress in Washington, and that would slow and aggravate Trump immensely.
And that's something that, speaking of, we're getting into the lead up to the midterms. That's something I found surprising. There are some Republicans that have said, even Mike Johnson, before he shut down the House floor, I believe it was maybe in the last 2 weeks, he gave an interview, very tacitly, but kind of saying they need to be more transparent about this before he made this move. But there'd been other Republicans that had come out and say, we need to see these files. And it surprised me that there were not more of them asking for the release, because their base is the one who are very angry about this and they want to see more. So I was wondering, why they wouldn't push for that further, because they're facing reelection.
Yeah.
Not. So
all of this uproar has caused Donald Trump to say to Attorney General Pam Bondi to release the grand jury transcripts. And it's not clear whether Florida grand jury, New York grand jury transcripts are oftentimes fairly light, in the sense that there might have been a long, complicated inquiry before charges are to be brought, but they might have one police officer or one FBI agent present the case. It's not that you're going to get 20 people giving various views on what happened and who did what. So it's not that dangerous, really, to release the transcript. And Trump said release only the dependable parts of the transcript, right? And so who's going to decide that but his handpicked attorney general? And what people are concerned about is that there is a vast trove of Epstein-related documents from various investigations, and nobody is really talking now about releasing all of that, because those inquiries would have talked to a lot of people who may not be guilty of anything, but whose name would then be connected to Jeffrey Epstein and maybe Donald Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell, and that's not fair either. So we're never going to get everything, but there are a lot of video transcripts, a lot of videos taken by Epstein and his cohorts. Much of that is just downloaded porn, but there may be others that is sort of their own tapes. We have no idea really at this point, but Pam Bondi and the authorities in Washington do know what they have, and that's what their followers are asking them. Let's hear what you have and your explanation for why we shouldn't see it. And that is hard for them, very hard for them to convince their followers they've given them everything meaningful You don't need anything more. The followers say yes, but what we do.
What do you think some of the biggest mistakes Trump and his administration has made politically in terms of this Epstein scandal, and how much weight is this going to have going into these midterms? Because it just seems like it's been misstep after misstep. But what would you say were some of their biggest stumbles in handling this
Yeah. I
scandal?
think you've got to go back and say, when you play with fire, you've got to expect that you might get burned, and it's playing with fire to make stuff up, or to take some facts and extrapolate them to a conspiracy theory that you then sell to your followers as the most likely explanation for this Jeffrey Epstein set of events. But then once you become officialdom, once you become the elected government in charge of all of these documents, and then turn around and say, oh, never mind, there's nothing here that you really need to see. We should be talking about the big, beautiful bill, or we should be talking about Barack Obama's treason, right? Which was what Trump said yesterday, to try to say, don't look over there, look over at this other thing. Look at Barack Obama's treason. And so they are working very, very hard to change the subject. And for the first time in Trump's 2 terms as president, it's not working. And so it is confusing for them. It's discomforting for them. And they've lost control of the conversation. And the great danger for them is if the Democrats gain control of it through some storyline that is the talk of the town, the talk of the country, that is a great danger to them. And once you've let the genie out of the bottle, once you have said there is in the hands of the government information that would explain Jeffrey Epstein and the role of major Democrats and liberals in his scandal, and you don't deliver, there's not much you can say.
It's interesting because when we know with just in Trump's history, since he's been in office out and then now back in, when he seems to get in trouble, there's like several names that get trotted out. Hillary Clinton, former President Joe Biden, former President Barack Obama. Just of lately, he's been accusing Obama of treason. Obama's office responded, calling that basically nonsense and misinformation. But it was interesting to me that what used to work, if you go kind of through some of his most ardent supporters in their social media feed, those types of things worked in the past for him. They would immediately change the conversation, and all of a sudden it was just like a freight train. But now I'm even seeing it, just with the most recent Obama allegations, even his people are saying, oh, now you're blaming Obama. We're not buying it this time. I mean, these old tricks aren't working.
Yeah, they are trying because there was a story in the Wall Street Journal 3, 4, 5 days ago now that outlined a birthday card that Donald Trump purportedly had sent to Jeffrey Epstein, outline of a naked woman and a message and a signature by Donald apparently on this naked woman, and a little poem suggesting that they shared some secrets. And many of his traditional supporters, even those who had been expressing doubts about the administration's handling of the Epstein matter, rallied because Trump said, look, it's the corrupt media again, out to get me. The Wall Street Journal is making this stuff up. And many MAGA people rallied to that idea because the media has been a major bugaboo for them for a long time. But it only held for a day or so. And then we're right back into, but let's see the documents because you told us they were there. And now if you don't show us, we're going to assume that perhaps you have something to hide. And that's where he is again. And that's why Obama came shuffling in from left center stage, I suppose you'd say.
And they both have kind of, I don't know if I could say their relationship is symbiotic, but they kind of like need each other. Like that, that Fox News arm has helped Donald Trump for so many years, and he's helped boost their ratings. And now Trump is going after that very organization. And even before that lawsuit, he's been kind of hitting at Fox News, which I found surprising in terms of like a political move, that he's now attacking a media outlet that has been so supportive of him. What do you make of that?
Yeah, Donald Trump does not take partial support. So if you think about the relationship with Elon Musk and the prediction that so many people made, this can't last. These are two titanic personalities. They're going to clash. There's going to be a breakup. Trump will probably come out on top. He's president. This guy's very, very rich, but he has less direct political power. Same thing with Rupert Murdoch, Fox News, and the Wall Street Journal, which Murdoch also owns. They did help Donald Trump at every stage along the way to becoming president the first time. But there have been a number of places where Fox News tried to be a legitimate news organization when they early reported the Arizona results in 2020, and Arizona went to Biden, and Trump said, you should have waited, you should have never said that Biden won, and a number of other things. So if you are a Donald Trump supporter, you've got to do what Marco Rubio has done, which is he had a history of his own positions. Many of them were strong against Russia and supportive of Ukraine. He gave all that up to adopt every position Donald Trump had and voice support for those, no matter what the cost to his personal reputation. If you are unwilling to go that far and maintain some personal discretion, some distance between Donald Trump, as Musk and Rupert Murdoch have done, you will at some point offend him enough that he will come after you. And the question is whether you can draw blood from him as well.
And you'd mentioned the midterms a couple of times earlier, and I kind of wanted to get into that. Do you think, and we know that the party that is in charge typically loses some seats, during the midterms, and some have been, kind of saying that they may lose even more because of this issue. Do you think this is a political gift to Democrats? Is this something that they can use to their advantage in the upcoming midterm elections, or is this something that they also need to have their own messaging and do a little bit even more than that to kind of pick up some traction?
Yeah, it is clearly a gift to the Democrats, but I've gotten gifts that I had trouble opening, and that's where the Democrats are right now. This is a gift. They have to be able to open it, and they have to find what's in it to be useful. They've got to find a way to articulate and develop themes around this Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy and set of issues. And they've got to do that while they also develop a way to talk to the broad American public about the things that affect their daily lives. Epstein doesn't. It's attractive, it's dramatic, people want to know. So the seamy side of that story. But they sit down at the kitchen table at night and try to make their money stretch to the end of the month. And they look at what they've got to feed their kids and wish they had more. They look at the prices, all of that. You've got to be able to talk to the public about their day-to-day concerns and how to make their life better. And Jeffrey Epstein has broken the momentum of Trump and the Republican Party. He's given Democrats an opportunity to capture some media attention. But now the question is, what do you have to say, guys? What is it that you have to say about Epstein? And once you get that out, because we're interested to hear it, but we want to know about these other economic issues and the kind, we want to hear about the kind of country that you would create for us to live in. And that brings up questions of social policy that Democrats have struggled with, prayer in the schools, gay marriage, transgender issues, all those kinds of things where Democrats have felt we have to stand for all of that because our base is concerned about these issues. But there's a good bit of middle America that listens to discussion of, say, transgender rights and says, yeah, I get that. I'm not opposed to transgender people, but this sports business worries me because, my daughter plays soccer and I'm just not sure who's going to be on the other team. And so you got to be able to talk about those things in a way that the broad public understands, nods yes as you're talking, even if some of your activist base eyes get wide, right? It's a trade-off. They got a few votes. These guys have a lot of votes. You got to talk to these guys.
And on that note, do you think that they'll be able to, is that the people that were kind of, well, let me start it with this. This last election, we saw a lot of people come to the voting booth that necessarily hadn't really participated in that before. And he was able to bring that group out. Are we at a time to where maybe those same people are kind of like their ears are open to even hear what Democrats might have to say, like after they talk about the what's going on with Epstein and maybe make some headway on that? Are they open to listening to what does the future look like if Democrats were in control, if Democrats were to able to articulate what their plan is? Is that sector of the populace, that voting populace, are they open to that right now?
Yeah, some are, some probably are not. One of the main groups that Donald Trump was effective with last time was young people and young men who are irregular voters and who came out in the excitement of the presidential election, but might not come out in a midterm election where turnout falls from 55, 60 down to 40, 45% of the voting population. And one has to wonder how offended young men are going to be about Jeffrey Epstein's activities and Donald Trump's proclivities. But the people that I would look at as being larger numbers are Black men and Hispanic men who drifted toward Donald Trump, while Black women and Hispanic women generally pretty much stayed home, but Black men and Hispanic men drifted toward Trump. And those men are interested in the economic issues. They're interested in jobs, they're interested in income, those kinds of things. And they wonder whether the Democrats are focused enough on that and think that Trump is better on the border, maybe slow down the immigration, less contesting of our jobs. And so Democrats have to be able to speak to those traditionally Democratic voters. And some polling suggests that while Black men and Hispanic men did drift toward Trump, current polling shows they're not happy. And so that means they might be open to Democrat messages if those messages were about the issues they care most about, and that's jobs and their families.
One other thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this conversation that we were going to have is the role that the church played in getting Donald Trump elected, specifically the evangelicals. And I had seen some conversations where people who had been a part of that church say that people that were defectors of MAGA who were questioning why they voted that way. And a lot of them mentioned that that's because that's what the church told them to do. They really felt that they were doing the right thing, that it was aligned within their faith, and now they're questioning that. And that made me wonder if that is one of the fallouts that we'll see from this whole saga concerning, Epstein and Trump, and will that church, that block, have to pivot in terms of the way that they handle their role in any elections further, because they were really, really basically trying to tell their congregation to vote a specific way.
Yeah, yeah. I think that when it's just Donald Trump, and the fact that Donald Trump has been married 3 times and has these accusations from women over time, and said some unfortunate things in the Hollywood tapes. The point is made by evangelicals that God throughout time has used flawed vessels and flawed men for his own purposes, and that God knows why he has called Donald Trump to the presidency. It's not for us to ask. But if Trump becomes connected to Epstein, that is a bridge too far, because God doesn't call anyone in the modern period, at least, to pursue mid-teenage girls. And there's another element of that evangelical community's religious belief that is encompassed in the traditional wives movement, that men are to lead their families and women are to follow their husbands. And you've seen some of that in Angela Paxton, the wife of the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who has decided that there's traditional and then there's traditional, and she's out of there now, or at least on her way out. So those parts of evangelical thinking and ideology supported Trump, but I don't think they support Trump connected at the hip with Epstein, if that connection can be made.
And lastly, just to wrap up, I want to get back to the Republicans, because they have there have been some outliers that have said this is not the right way to handle this. We want to see these files released, but a lot of them have, fallen in line, and it got me to thinking that at some point Trump is not always going to be in office, and a lot of them still have a long way to go. They want to get reelected. They want to keep their position. Is this the hill to die on? I mean, aren't they going to be adversely affected by something like this, or will America in a year or two, it's going to be something else that we're paying attention to?
I think that Donald Trump has gained such complete control of the Republican Party, and still has it today, even though it's somewhat disrupted by this issue, that Republicans don't feel that they can oppose him on a major item and remain Republicans or remain in public office. Tom Tillis, senator from North Carolina, has decided not to run for re-election because he couldn't vote for some elements of Trump's big, beautiful bill. And that's what has happened to people who oppose Trump. They have been drummed out of the party. And if you look at the Texas Senate race coming up in 2026, where John Cornyn, who is a 20-plus year Republican senator, a business kind of Republican, moderate to conservative, against Ken Paxton, a MAGA conservative. And Cornyn is down 15 points in the polls because he's seen as not sufficiently supportive of Trump. And he's trying to get Trump's endorsement. And he's moving as far as he can toward Trump to get that endorsement. And I think that's where the Republican Party still is. But when things break, they break fast. Dams crack. There's a little bit of a leak, and then all of a sudden the dam is gone, and people have to find their own way to high ground. And Republicans may find themselves in that position here before long.
We'll go ahead and wrap there. There's so much there, and I'm sure in the weeks to come there'll be even more, and we'll have another discussion, because again, as I said earlier, this is not going away.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, people, even supporters. I mean, there are supporters who admire Donald Trump for going for what he wants, taking what he wants. In business, in his sort of pursuit of sexual gratification, but that's not 14-year-old girls, right?
Yeah.
As far as we know, that connection, that this is a ladies' man, a guy who always gets his way. Well, if his way is unacceptable to any father in the country, that's a problem.
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
We
Again,
will.
Professor Jillson, as always, it has been a wonderful conversation, so much great information. And thank you to all of you watching. And again, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. It's free of charge and it supports the channel.